Awesome. Very well. Welcome, everyone, again. Thank you so much for joining us for the office hours number 11 with our guest, Eitan, today. Thank you, Eitan, for being here. It's an honor.
Yeah, happy to
So
be here.
Eitan is a former EPF fellow from the cohort 4, not that long ago, actually, and now working in Sigma Prime, working on the Lighthouse Consensus client. Thank you so much again for joining. It's really great to have a successful fellow here, somebody to share also their journey, their perspective, their experience, and I think something that people can relate more to here. Um, so. Um, let me start with that, maybe if you recall, what was it like when you were starting, what brought you to the EPF? Like what was your motivation to start? How was the program for you?
Yeah,
What's your journey?
yeah. So, man, this was probably like 3 years ago. I was at the time working for some uh, Web3 company, um, doing some software development, and one of my coworkers told me about the EPF, and this was like midway through EPF 3. So I had just kind of joined a couple calls, just listening in. I didn't really participate in anything. I was just kind of listening in and learning about it more. And when a little bit before EPF 4 came around, um, I started getting interested again and wanted to actually participate this time. Um, and so I opened a couple PRs on Lighthouse, really, really small PRs. Like, I don't know, I think the first PR was like fixing some logs, and then a couple other, smaller ones, and applied to EPF4. And I got in as a permission fellow. And yeah, just went from there.
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Ethan. Yeah, and I think people can relate to that. Like I see this quite often that people hear about EPF and it takes them a while to be able to join and actually dive into it. Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you so much. And now, how about after, like your EPF experience, or what was your experience like getting started in Lighthouse after? Um,
Yeah, yeah. So like, I had contributed a little bit to Lighthouse before the EPF, and one of the things that kind of I learned because of like listening in on the EPF like the year before was that there was like actually like multiple client implementations. I hadn't known that before. I thought there was like Geth and whatever consensus client, and that's it. I think this was like kind of around the merge when I like learned about that. So that like really piqued my interest, and it was also at the same time where I started learning about like Rust, the programming language, a little bit. And so I think I was looking at Reth and Lighthouse, trying to pick which client to contribute to. And Reth at the time, I don't know if it's still today, like it was very competitive, like trying to get issues. There was just so many external contributors. Like an issue would pop up, and within like 5 minutes, someone would take it. It was kind of insane. And so and then on Lighthouse, there was a lot of like good first issues, and less competition over those issues. So I picked up a few, and when I remember I opened like my first couple PRs, and I was actually getting feedback from the Lighthouse team, um, which was kind of like crazy to me. Like, I'm just like this random stranger on the internet, and these pretty good software engineers are like giving me feedback and telling me how to oh, you need to fix this, or this is better. And so it was also like a really good way for me to learn about Rust. Um, and yeah, I never contributed to open source software before either. So it's kind of new to all of that. But yeah, just like I felt like I was getting, a little bit of attention on my PRs and like feedback. And it was like, I felt like I should be like honestly paying for that kind of feedback. Like it was like, they were like teaching me in a way, I mean, obviously I was putting in effort. But yeah, after those first couple PRs, after like getting feedback, and um, I just, yeah, decided to go work on Lighthouse.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's also, I think, very good advice, very interesting way how, yeah, you chose the client and the right places to contribute to, because sometimes like people are drawn to the projects that are the most overhyped, but it's also, it means it's much more competitive to actually contribute there, making harder. That's interesting. Thank you. And yeah, and what about right now? So what are you working on these days? What is your role within the team? What part of the client? What are you excited about?
Yeah. So I mean, the last month or so, the whole team's been pretty focused on Fulu. So getting PeerDesk ready for the test nets. We're really trying hard to hit a couple deadlines, um, so that Fulu is forked on time and all of that. Jimmy, which was a EPF fellow in cohort 3, he's kind of leading. He's been leading the PeerDesk efforts. So me and a couple other guys on the team have just been assisting him, trying to push optimizations out the door. We've been working a lot on there's been a lot of sync issues that we've had because of PeerDesk. So trying to fix those. Beforehand, I was doing a lot of work on Fossil. So me and a couple of other client teams were able to set up a little local testnet and interop with each other, with the Fossil changes, which is cool. And I think mostly what I do is a lot of different random things sometimes. So it could be database related stuff, maybe actual EIPs, small optimizations, lots of bug fixes. Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place a lot of the times, and just try to help where I can.
Ah, you're a soldier, I see. Awesome. Uh, it's a little interesting that, I mean, you were working with Jimmy. I mean, that's also cool. And there is Daniel as well. I think we have 3 people in Lighthouse coming from different EPF cohorts. So yeah, in the future, the goal is to have more people from EPF than non-EPF in the client team. That's awesome. Cool. And maybe one more question before I open it up for the audience. If you are looking back at this experience of the transitioning and just working with the client team, uh, what was surprising, or maybe what is the difference between doing the EPF and contributing as a part of the EPF and actually being part of the client team? Yeah, how does it feel different? What is surprising or something? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so to be aware of.
So during the EPF, I had worked on a couple different things for my project, plus a lot of really small PRs. So I had already not become super familiar with the code base, but I had a good understanding of where things were. And I remember my first day of work at Sigma Prime, when I had been onboarded to previous companies, that process took a while. It was the first time looking at the code base. So it's kind of interesting, showing up to a company and I've already been working on this code base for 2 to 3 months. So I felt like I was kind of ahead that way. And I guess the biggest difference is, because I'm working for Sigma Prime, I can schedule calls with my coworkers whenever I want. We have meetings, and so there's much more direct line of communication with the rest of the team. Whereas when you're an external contributor, you're kind of outside looking in. You might not be able to meet as much with some of the external contributors or get as much attention, I guess, because they're off working their day job or whatever. But as a coworker, I have weekly meetings with Michael and Jimmy and weekly meetings with the rest of the team. And so yeah, I'm just their coworker. So I guess there's that dynamic that's just a little different.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, being even closer to them, of course. Yeah, makes sense. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, thanks, Ethan. And yeah, let me open this for the audience. We have some questions in the issue as well, from folks who couldn't make it. But first, I'm wondering if there is someone eager to ask a question. Feel free to raise your hand, and feel free to ask or write in the chat as well if you cannot use the mic. And if nobody's ready for questions yet, okay, we got some already. Okay, let's get started. I think Shane was first.
Hey,
Yeah.
I'm Shane. I'm working with Mark over at Lighthouse, implementing EPBS. And Yeah, I also read in your like cohort 4, I think, review, like for your after you had completed it, that you had done a good bit of like contributions to Lighthouse while also doing like your main project. I'm curious, like, do you think it was very beneficial to doing those other like small PRs to maybe get more familiar with other folks from the team as opposed to like your core mentor? Just curious, like, how much of a differentiator you think like doing just a variety of tasks at the same time was.
Yeah. I guess one thing I noticed when I was an external contributor is like how like the Lighthouse team was working on like a bunch of different things at the same time, and that kind of happens, at a lot of different companies as well. And so I kind of just wanted to show them that I could do that too, that I could multitask and work on a lot of different things. My personal situation was I had a lot of free time to do this, so like I don't think I don't think anyone expects you to, be opening a bunch of PRs and all of that. But I did have extra time, and I was, working weekends sometimes. And yeah, my whole kind of mentality was if I just like keep opening PRs, like, maybe they'll hire me eventually. But like, I don't know if like that's the best like way to go about it, and it really depends on your personal situation. And I don't think anyone expects you to do that either. This was just me, maybe kind of taking it a little too far. Maybe I don't know. Yeah,
No, you got more experience also with the code base. Like you were saying, it was easier to start once you've already touched a few different things. And also you build confidence as well from having done a variety of things as opposed to just like DB work, for example, the entirety of the cohort.
for sure. And I guess I was trying to tap into like things that I'm good at. Like I'm good at just like, maybe like working long hours, like grinding things out. And like, I'm not like the smartest person in the world, but I have my own strengths. And I was just trying to like lean into those. And so I think that was my strategy. Yeah.
Get shit done. Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Before we jump to the GitHub questions, Lee has another one.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks also for your previous answer. That's also one question I was curious about. And my question is more about the peer DAS because I'm working on DAS, and I also asked this question before. So, did you identify any like challenges or any issues you want to, uh, like you think like peer DAS has, or you want something new for the folders in the future? Yeah.
So
Awesome.
did we? So like challenges we've recently identified with PeerDAS, I think PeerDAS is a very like big change because it touches a lot of different things. So you know, block production, a little bit of fork choice, sync's a big one. With in Deneb when blobs were introduced, there was like a pretty big change to sync. But now that validators are only custodying like a subset of columns, it makes sync even more complicated because the amount of peers that can there's only certain peers that can serve you those columns during sync. And so, for example, during DevNet 3, we there was a bug in one of the clients. I don't remember the exact details, but we got into like non-finality, and it became like a very like forky chain. There was just like a ton of forks everywhere, and Lighthouse was really struggling syncing because we were having not only trouble finding peers on the right chain, but finding peers that are custodying the columns that we need to custody on the right chain. And so over the last like 3 weeks, we've actually like overhauled sync pretty dramatically. One of the big changes is we were using data columns by range RPC requests to fetch columns for like a range of slots. And on forky chains, it becomes very difficult. And so we actually change things to where we first request blocks by range and then request data columns by root. So you can request like a set of data columns by the block root. And that made it much easier to sync on like these non-finality forky chains. There's been a lot of other like optimizations that we had to do. For example, KZG verification is a pretty like computationally expensive process. For supernodes, reconstruction is a very computationally expensive process. So we really had to like like dig in and figure out, okay, when should a supernode reconstruct? Or with KZG verification, how many CPU threads should we be using to do KZG verification? For example, during like forward sync, you want to sync as quickly as you can. So we'll let the node take as many CPU threads as it needs to perform KZG verification. But during backfill sync, once the node is already synced and can participate in the network, some nodes will start backfill syncing as well. We don't want to use as many CPU threads because it can make like validator performance worse, because you're taking up all these CPU threads to do KZG verification instead of like a testing or whatever other validator duties you need to do. So yeah, there's been a lot of challenges there, and a lot of them have kind of recently been we've recently learned about, mostly because of like the non-finality issues, which is good that we're figuring them out now and not later. So yeah, that's really what we've been doing the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I think there was a second part to your question, but I don't remember it.
What's like for the folders? What do you think would be nice to have in the future?
Oh,
Add
like
features,
yeah,
or like make it simple or anything?
yeah. So I think right now with PureDAS, we have like this BPO schedule where we're increasing the blob count on like an interval. And I'm not sure if like full DAS is really needed at the moment, based on like the blob counts we're trying to increase to and a lot of the metrics that we've been looking at. I don't think full DAS is going to be needed anytime in the immediate future. I'm not sure at what blob count like it becomes much more important, but with the numbers we're looking at and the numbers we want to get to, full DAS isn't like as important at the moment. And I think one of the EF researchers actually wrote a post about that on the ETH R&D Discord in the data sharding channel. If I find it, I can try linking to it. He explained like exactly like with the numbers, like why full DAS isn't needed in the immediate future.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, for us, also still need a lot of preparation, theoretical wise, and also architectural wise. If we have time, I'd like to know more about the finality issue you have faced, like that fork issue you have faced during the PureDAS development. But it depends on if we have enough time this call.
Yeah, and if
go
we
ahead.
if we don't have enough time during this call, you can like always feel free to message me, and I can add more details.
You can also ask in the Discord channel. I think we have enough time for questions. We have 40 minutes to go, but we have a couple of questions in the GitHub I wanted to get into. There's 3 of them, so maybe let's just take a first one, because this is something that you also partially discussed with Shane. Since you worked on multiple parts of the consensus client during and after EPF, which area gave you the most confidence in your consensus client knowledge? Which part of the client would you recommend an EPF participant to focus on the most?
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'd recommend to focus on the most. So like when I was an EPF fellow, the thing I first started focusing on was the Beacon API and the database stuff, because those were things I was familiar with in my previous work experience. Like, if you're a software dev, you probably spun up some APIs, or you've probably done some database stuff. So like, I didn't want to dive into like fork choice, or, because I've just never even had any experience with that. And it was kind of like this kind of scary place to look at. But the API stuff was like very familiar. The database stuff was very familiar. And like one of the things that actually gave me the most confidence was actually maybe like 6 or 8 months ago, I don't remember exactly, was during the Holsky non-finality incident. So like Holsky, because of like some client bugs, a majority of the network attested to an invalid block. And that just caused like a lot of chaos. Consensus clients couldn't sync. And Lighthouse itself had a ton of issues. So like, because we were in non-finality for so long, we were hitting like out of memory issues. our client would just like crashing over and over and over again. And so, we as a team kind of sat in a war room and just started trying to like fix all these different issues. And it was kind of like a stressful time. We were kind of trying to treat it as if like mainnet exploded. I mean, I think if mainnet exploded, we would have probably maybe worked more hours than we would have, but we were like just trying to, play along with it and recover as quickly as we could. And I learned a lot during that process. I think just getting thrown in, trying to like debug things that maybe I never even looked at before or thought about, really like gave me like maybe a deeper understanding of Lighthouse than I had before. And it was really only like a period of like a week or two when we were, doing all of this work, but because it was so like, I guess hands-on and intense in a way. And because we were sitting in a war room with each other, just like constantly talking and working on like all these fixes on a lot of like different parts of the code base, it just gave me a lot of confidence. And I think I learned more in like those couple of weeks than I had in like a long time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ethan. Yeah, that's really great. I mean, it's a great advice to start from what is familiar, but also like the Holashki incident. I think it was a learning experience for everyone. And the cool part is that we even have one fellow who is now working on the improving the caching in Lighthouse to help with future non-finality incidents, and he is a hand up. So, Odinson, if you want to ask, this is exactly your time.
Thank you, Mario. So, hey, Ethan, I am Odinson. Am I
Hey,
audible? Firstly,
good man. How are you?
yeah, I am doing great. So, yeah, like I have radio, sorry, radio weekly updates and like your entire journey from being a cohort member to being in Lighthouse and Sigma Prime. So, a few questions I would like to ask. So, like you have been working on the slasher DB implementation when you are in the cohort. So, like apart from working on the database, how did you like as you said you are working on like a lot of PRs and issues since you had some time. So was solving issues and PRs the way you got like familiar to other parts like the validator client and other parts, or like you were also going through the entire code base with time? Like how did you get familiar to other parts like the validator client or other sections?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone probably has like their own way of learning a code base. For me, I learned the code base by working on specific issues. So like, I actually, when I started, I was like intentionally ignoring different parts of the code base. Like, if I was working on the Beacon API, I was just looking at the Beacon API. I wasn't trying to like learn everything. And to be fair, there's probably still parts of the code base that I'm not like super familiar with. I think that process takes a lot of time. And Lighthouse is a pretty complex piece of software. And so yeah, my strategy was like you just take it like small pieces at a time. So like if I'm working, one of the things I worked on was kind of the block production flow. So in Deneb, we moved to like the V3 endpoint for block production, and it like kind of changed a few things along the way with how Lighthouse does its block production flow. And so like when I worked on that issue, that's when I learned, okay, how does block production work at a high level? And anytime I was working on an issue, I was just trying to learn about like specifically what I needed to get that issue done instead of like trying to figure out everything. And so like my strategy was, to literally ignore parts of the code base, not to spend too much time trying to learn everything, and like, accepting the fact that I'm not going to know everything right away, and just like trying to just take it small chunks at a time.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also, like speaking of the Hosky non-finality incident, like that was a like obviously a good learning curve, and like you guys worked together. And apart from that, like were there any other like struggles that happened during the course of time you have been working with Sigma Prime or Lighthouse, where like you faced some struggles and you worked a lot and like learned a lot in that process?
Yeah. There's been a lot of struggles for sure. And another like cool learning experience for me, I guess, was during we had like an interop event in Kenya, where all the client teams like kind of sat in a room, and we're trying to ship like the Electra DevNet 0. And that whole week, I had worked on like some of the attestation changes that were involved with Electro, which on the surface looked like a pretty small EIP, but because that change touched so many places in the code base, it actually became like a much bigger feature than we thought it was going to be. And it was very like delicate in a way. Like small bugs were hard to like, it was hard to figure out like what was broken at first. And so, I literally spent most of like the interop in Kenya just like banging my head against the computer, trying to get things to work. And what's nice is I have, coworkers that, have more experience than me with the code base. And so anytime I get stuck, I can reach out and like ask questions. And because we were all on the same roof, we ended up getting, an Electra DevNet shipped by the end of the interop. But yeah, there's always moments where like I get stuck, or I can't figure out why things are working. And, sometimes it's just like sitting in front of a computer for like 4 or 5 hours, just running the same test case again and over, and looking at logs and trying to figure out why it's not working. Sometimes, it's asking questions. But yeah, it's always like, it always has its like ups and downs. Like you always think, oh, now I finally, figured everything out. It's going to be smooth sailing from here. And then you pick up another issue and you get stuck again on something. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm also like struggling right now with something like that, since I like implemented the memory aware caching part, and I was seeing that the memory like that thing is actually working, and then I sent the logs to Michael, and he said like I am not calculating most of the beacon states fields. So I was like, oh shit, I'll have to work on it again. So
Yeah.
yeah, and like the team is very helpful as well. I have learned a lot from you already.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. That's really cool. Yeah. And it's really great to see, by the way, that people are actually reading the previous fellows' development updates diaries there. So it works. It's really great to see. Awesome. Okay, let me get, feel free to raise your hands, guys. But meanwhile, let me read another question from GitHub. This is a long one. It has 3 questions in it. Maybe let me take it one by one. Lukasin, who is working on Tokyo tracing in Grandine client. He has some questions about the tracing implementation. From your experience adding tracing to Lighthouse, what have been the most practical benefits? Which types of spans of structured fields did you find most useful for diagnosing network layer peer-to-peer issues?
Yeah, so tracing has been really nice for some of the peer dash changes lately that we've been working on. So adding spans to like the whole KZG verification process. Well, we call it like chain processing during sync, where we receive like a chain of blocks and columns, and then we do like a bunch of verification. And so spans have like given us like a very granular view of like how long things are taking, what exactly is going on. Whereas opposed to before tracing, we kind of just relied on metrics, which is it just told you like how long the specific process took. But with like a span, you have like this like very detailed view of like all the function calls, how long each one of them took. And it's been really, really nice. We've used it in like the block production flow. I think we want to add spans to some fork choice stuff in the near future. So yeah, like I think initially tracing was actually added by an EPF fellow. And it's a big grind to work on that feature because there's just a lot of like code changes, a lot of like small like little details to look at. And when we added tracing, it wasn't just the fellow, it was also us. We had done a couple things wrong, and so like some of the spans that we had implemented kind of like ended up being these long-lived spans that were slowly taking up a bunch of memory in Lighthouse. And finding that out like took some time, and we realized we were kind of using spans in the wrong way. But once we've like started using those spans in the right way and using them in like the right places, it's really given us just like a deeper view of like what's going on in Lighthouse and really helped us like debug certain issues. And yeah, I think it's been a really positive addition to the code base.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. And the question has one more part. Was relying on opt-in, opt-out mechanisms enough to balance log detail and performance, or did you use additional strategies? Did you perform any benchmarks comparing the old logging system with the new tracing implementation?
Yeah, so like really what our goal was with tracing initially was to just kind of like mimic how like our old like logging mechanisms look like. We really didn't want to like affect like downstream users. A lot of users kind of rely on logs to monitor, you know, their node health in a lot of ways, and so we didn't want to like drastically change things. We really wanted to like keep things as similar as we could, and it was, yeah, it was kind of a challenge because our previous logging library and tracing just like on a fundamental level work pretty differently, but I think we got pretty close. And so, yeah, that was one of like the main goals of outside of just like adding more granular details to the code base was like to kind of not change too many things, which was a challenge. Was there another part to that question? Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. Like, how did you, whether you somehow benchmarked it and compare it to the old system? Was the second
Yeah,
part?
yeah. So we did benchmark, and initially we didn't really see any issues. Like, I don't know, tracing and logging seemed to be working just fine from like all the metrics we were looking at. But then as we were running the node for like an extended period of time, we saw that like slowly over time we were having like memory issues. And at first we didn't think it was tracing; we thought it was something else. So we added like, you know, kind of debug that whole situation and realized that okay, we had these like long-lived spans that were slowly eating up more and more memory. But that, yeah, that probably took about like a month of just running tracing on some node and yeah, finally realizing like, oh crap, like this is taking up a bunch of memory. What did we do? And then figuring out that we were just using spans in the wrong way.
Awesome. That's interesting. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we got more questions from the audience. Shane, go ahead.
Yeah, just related to the tracing. I know you guys have the Lighthouse metrics repo where you can essentially hook up to some local node running on the DevNet, and it'll expose an endpoint that Prometheus can ingest and then capture those spans. And then you could check out any kind of graphics on Grafana using that data. And I think you have Tempo as well now to dive a little bit deeper into the spans. I'm just curious if you use these pretty regularly. Like currently with the DevNet 3 issues, I can see like people, folks like Mark, like using it to try to figure out issues with like data columns and requesting too many data columns from the same block, for example, as a current issue. And I've just jumped on calls with them to check it out, and I'm just curious if this is something that you use relatively regularly. Is it kind of more in this scenario where we have a DevNet we're trying to get up, or do you actually use it for like normal development too?
Yeah, I would say so. Jimmy added a lot of the tempo stuff maybe like a month ago, and I think ever since he's added it, I've been probably using it like almost every day.
Wow, cool.
So it's been really nice. Yeah, like Mark recently added like some spans around like validator duty requests. Because yeah, we had an issue where nodes that weren't synced were being spammed by the validators to calculate like validator duties. And this was actually slowing down the node pretty badly because it was trying to calculate duties for like states that it didn't have. And yeah, so we like adding those spans like kind of let us figure out like, oh, this is exactly the endpoint that the validator is requesting, and requesting it in situations where it's not synced, and it's like slowing down things pretty dramatically. And yeah, I think I've probably been using ever since like we've added tempo and all that stuff. I've been using it almost every day.
Sweet. I was curious how useful it is to learn because I've also like spanned up Lighthouse metrics and got the like Panda Ops DevNet hookup between like your Nethermind and Lighthouse client going. So anyway, yeah, it's just good to learn, and it's good to know also that it has lasting utility outside just like debugging these DevNet issues. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think the Pandas also added support for it in Kurtosis, and they've also added support for it in like DevNet 3 in general recently. So yeah, it's been really nice for sure.
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much. Um, guys, feel free to raise your hand, ask some more questions. We have still plenty of time, 20 minutes to go, so feel free to ask. Lee.
Yeah, since we looks like we still have more time, so I'd like to continue the previous question about the fork issue. You have like that long fork during the development of the paradox. I want to know more, like
Yeah.
detail
So
on why.
yeah, on DevNet 3, we were in like non-finality and had like a lot of different chains on the network. Like we had the canonical chains plus a ton of different side chains that were invalid. And the way we had previously done range and backfill sync was we would find peers that can serve us a range of blocks and columns and request those blocks and columns at the same time using blocks by range and data columns by range RPC requests. With those RPC requests pretty much just allow you to like list like from slot, X to Y. I want the columns for this indices, or I want these blocks. And the way we requested blocks and columns was very like intertwined, I guess. And if any part of that request failed, we would throw the whole batch away and re-request it. And the issue was with all these like forky chains, if like we requested from peers that were on the invalid chain, which there was a lot of, we would try to get the blocks, we would try to get the columns, we'd do all the like KZG verification, blah blah blah, and then figure out, okay, this is actually maybe like after we request some number of batches, we figure out, okay, this is not the canonical chain. We have to like throw all this work away and start again. And so syncing was like very, very slow. It actually wasn't progressing in many situations. If you got lucky and had good peers, you could sync, but it was very like hit and miss. And so we've changed things to where now we're requesting blocks by range first. So we request like some set of blocks. And then now that we have those block routes, we can, for each slot, request the data columns for that slot using columns by route request. So we've like separated blocks and column requests. So we always do blocks first. And then we after we like verify that those blocks are on the right chain and are on the canonical chain, blah, blah, blah. Then we request the columns afterwards with like some different set of peers. And we make like a by route request. So for, I don't know, some block in slot 20 with some block route, we can use that specific block route to make a data column request. And it becomes sync becomes much more predictable. It becomes much easier to also like attribute fault to like specific peers. So like when peers serve you like bad data, you can like downscore them and potentially like disconnect if they're, misbehaving or whatever. And with data columns by route request, it's much easier to attribute fault to specific peers. So we know like this peer for this route served us a bad column. We're going to ban them or whatever. And so, yeah, with those changes, sync just became much more predictable, easier to attribute fault to bad peers and like get rid of bad peers, and helped us like sync. Now this change is still like a work in progress. We haven't merged it to unstable yet, but we've done a lot of testing, and that's what we've seen so far. And I think there's probably still some small tweaks. But yeah, that's kind of like the high level overview.
So to my understanding, what you have done is like try to get the blocks at the first phase and to see which blocks is going to be added to the chain, and then to query the blobs attached to these blocks.
Yeah. So it's like query some range of blocks, verify those blocks, and then after we verify, fetch like individual columns by those block routes. Instead of doing a column by range request, which is like, oh, from slot, I don't know, X to Y, give us these columns, we request columns by specific block routes. So it just becomes much more becomes it just makes sync much more stable and more predictable.
Yeah, that's actually follows the idea of the theoretical DOS design. But my question is, if we query the blobs later, would that actually makes the delay of the confirmation longer or anything?
This is for syncing. So this is when the node is not synced. So this is when we're just trying to sync a beacon node. Does it so like the delays between fetching blocks and columns isn't like super important. We do need to make sure that that data is available eventually. And so like those delays are much more important when your node is synced and starting to perform validator duties. Like you can't attest to a block if you're not able to see the columns for that block, for example. And in the in like a full node case, let's say your custody requirement is you have to custody 4 columns. You're not supposed to attest to a block until you've seen those 4 columns. In a super node case, so those are nodes that have to custody all the columns, you're not supposed to attest to a block until you've seen all the columns, or seen at least half of them and then reconstructed the rest of the columns. So yeah, those delays are much more important when your node is synced and performing validator duties versus when you're just syncing. Because when you're syncing, you're not performing validator duties, you're just trying to catch up to the chain. So I'm sure there's a bunch of other optimizations to sync to maybe speed things up or to make things a little simpler. But yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, that's very clear. That's very nice answer. I mean, yeah, that's true. I feel the bottleneck would be the validator or the supernode part. If they need to both synchronize the block and the blobs and all this stuff. So yeah, but that's not a whole network issue. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Cool. Yeah, Shane.
Hey, you mentioned you work on the Beacon API a bit, and I want to try to standardize what we'll need to change for it in EPBS. Like you mentioned, you worked on produce block a little bit, and essentially, when we get the response back, we're gonna have to remove things like the execution payload. Probably don't need blobs anymore, KZD commitments. So it's all just in the return type. The params that will pass will still be the same, like ran down and whatnot. Do you think that justifies a V4 update, or do you think we can keep it as V3 and just change like the version field to be GlowS and all this the response objects?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say like the people maintaining the Beacon API repo are the best people to ask that question to. But I would, at least from
Does TakeU maintain it, or is it like somebody else?
No, I think it's someone from the EF.
Okay.
I can double check. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I would say like anytime there's like a change to like return types for an endpoint, we usually move to a new version.
Okay.
In the EPBS case, I'm not 100% sure, just because I'm not like super familiar with EPBS, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it sounds like if like the return types are changing, that usually and historically we've moved to like a new version. But yeah, you can if you open up like a PR with those changes in the repo, you'll get pretty quick feedback, or you can ask in Discord. And if you just look at the repo and look at like the biggest contributors, those are, or I think they probably have like a maintainer tag. Those are the people that maintaining the Beacon API repo and would be the best to ask that question.
Yeah, just quickly, it's basically like the validate client is requesting the Beacon node to come back with a new Beacon block. So the Beacon block body is not going to have the execution payload anymore under EPBS. It's going to be separated out, and we'll grab that payload later on in the life cycle of block production. So anyway, yeah, that's why the return type's changing. You're not going to have a payload anymore. So I just want to summarize that. But yeah, thank you for explaining how to move forward.
Cool. Yeah, off just like from what I'm hearing, it sounds like a new version makes sense, but maybe the Beacon API maintainers have other ideas about that.
For sure.
Okay. Can you hear me now? I'm back.
Yeah.
So sorry, I had to switch to data. And yeah, I want to ask, did you ask the last question from the GitHub? There's one more. Mhm. Let's do that one then. After integrating tracing into Lighthouse, did you ever use tool like FlameGraph or Tokyo Console to analyze performance or async behavior? If so, did you find them helpful, or was the benefit limited?
I've
Sorry.
never used flame graphs,
Yeah.
but in Grafana, there's like a way to like look up trait like specific spans, and then it gives you like a kind of like this full picture of like the um, function call tree or whatever, and you could see how long each call took. And so I use that a lot. Yeah, I never used flame graphs. Maybe that would be cool to use. I'm not sure. But yeah, most of the stuff tracing wise, I just look in Grafana at the moment. Yeah, Shane.
Yeah, just for everyone here, we're all very interested in core development, and you kind of went through the process, ended up getting on core team. And one part I'm curious, and I'm sure it's different for like every client team, is what was the process like going from like doing EPF, maybe presenting Dev Connect or DevCon, whatever, and then getting like onto client team? Was it like, hey, you've been doing all these awesome contributions, you want to maybe apply for a job? Or did you like signal to them in some way, or like, it'd actually be pretty dope if we did this long term? Yeah, just curious, like how it was for you personally. I understand it'll be different for everyone.
Yeah. So after like at the end of EPF when we did like presentations, we were in I don't know if it was DevCon or DevConnect, one of those in Istanbul, and that was the first time I met like some of the Lighthouse people face to face. So I met Michael Sproul, I met Age, and yeah, just talking, getting to know them at like one of the. I think we had like this like little event where we had like the where the EPF people were invited to hang out with the client teams at like a restaurant bar kind of thing. And then, so yeah, I talked to them a bit there. And then during the presentation day, they showed up and listened in on all the presentations. And I kind of presented my work. And I think Age came up to me and like was like, "Wow, I didn't realize you did all of that. That's super cool." And I had talked to. They asked me like, would you be interested in working as a client of? I think Mario and like my exit interview also asked me if like what's my next steps, and I told them I would love to work for a client team. And kind of one of the things that I did after all that, they said like, oh, that'd be cool. Maybe we could talk later, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't hear from them for like maybe a month or two. But during that time, I still like just kept contributing to Lighthouse. I thought like if I just keep opening PRs, they just won't be able to say no eventually. And then Age reached out to me, asked if I wanted to interview. And I did, and I was super stoked and nervous. But the interview went well. I think one thing that made the interview a little bit easier was because I already had like a body of work. They already knew kind of like my skills as like a software engineer. And so that made like the interview process like pretty easy actually. But yeah, that was kind of it. So it was like a few months after the end of EPF where they, finally reached out and asked to schedule an interview. And then from there, after the interview went well and blah, 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 I accepted a position and went on from there.
So main takeaway, keep building.
Yeah. I mean, obviously people have like different priorities and schedules in life. So like, I'm not saying like, give, full time, like contribute all the time, but like if you just chip away at it. And if it's something that you want to do, I think it's kind of hard sometimes when you're not getting, actually paid to do this type of work. It's kind of tough. But if that's something that you want to do, I think as long as you keep contributing, there's positions for almost anyone in Ethereum in general. So it doesn't have to be like, client dev. It could be with the like pandas doing DevOps, or maybe with like the EF, like helping maintain the Beacon API specs or whatever. There's so many like different opportunities and positions. And if you really want it, I think as long as you keep chipping away at it, there'll be a spot there for you somewhere. Hopefully, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. Keep at it, basically. Yeah. Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, glad to see the conversation still going. We have last few minutes to go. Yeah, so sorry again about my internet coming off, but I'm fully back now. We have last few minutes. Do we have maybe one more question somebody would like to ask? Okay. Oh, we got two of them. Okay, I think Pillows first. Okay.
Sure, thanks. Quick question. I was just interested in what a interview for a core dev position looks like. Is it more like just quizzing you on your knowledge of core development stuff, or I'd be curious to hear. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say every client team is drastically different. So my experience is not going to be the experience of other client teams, or even depending who interviews you at Lighthouse. Maybe I'm not 100% sure. So I know like some client teams do like some like technical interview or ask a lot of like technical questions. I think for my situation specifically with Lighthouse, because I think I had like over 15 PRs at the time that were merged to Unstable. They had like a very good idea of like my skill level as a software developer. So it was really just a conversation. But again, like I think it really depends on like your specific situation and what client team you're interviewing and who's interviewing you. So there's no like structured, like everyone does it this way every time. That was just my experience. And I think, yeah, everyone's experience. I know some other EPF fellows from my cohort that interviewed had a pretty like technical interview with, I forget what client team. So yeah, I think it just really depends.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, and that's really true. Like that's the point of EPF. The client teams are mostly familiar with your technical skills, and then it's much easier to have a conversation. Okay, Iran has one last question.
Yes, the last one. So, as an ex EPF like fellow, and now switching as a core dev, what do you think is your most underrated tools or like strategy that you use now, switching from an ex EPF to a core dev?
My most underrated tools or strategies.
Or strategy, yes.
Yeah, I think starting small is really important. Like, and a lot of these like client code bases, they're very like complicated and technical. And some of the issues that you want to work on sometimes could be like pretty tough for someone that's not like familiar with the code base. So I think starting small is really important. The smallest like good first issue you could find is my recommendation, and then like building up from there. Slowly. It takes a long time. Like if you think about it, when you start like at a new company, I mean the onboarding process takes at least 2 or 3 months, and you're working like full time. And in that time, like, man, if you could get like a feature or two out the door, I think that's like awesome progress. And so I always try to look at it in that way. Like, okay, I'm trying to onboard to this new code base. Like, imagine I was an employee here. Like, what would I do? I would start small. And obviously, you're not working full time, so it might take even longer. That's one of my strategies. Also, don't be too hard on yourself, kind of that whole thing. Like there's a lot of things you're not going to know and a lot of things you're going to get stuck on. Like I remember when I first was learning Rust, something that would take me like 30 minutes in Python took me like 6 hours in Rust. And so there's always like maybe the learning curve of like the language you're trying to write in, the code base you're trying to write in. And so, just it's a grind, and you're just like slowly chipping away at it. And if you like start small and just like build those building blocks, eventually you can start working on bigger and bigger things and kind of build that knowledge base. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's a great advice to actually wrap it up on. We are right at a full hour here. Yeah, that was really great. Thank you so much, Eitan. Yeah. Yeah, very skilled developer, very experienced. So thank you so much for all the knowledge, all the inspiration. I believe that the fellows learned a lot today. Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I
Yeah.
was happy to be here. And on Discord, I'm Uncle Bill's on Discord. So you can reach out to me if you have questions, or on GitHub, whatever, or Telegram. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ethan. Really appreciate your time. It was really great. So thank you so much for joining today, all of you, especially Ethan. Yeah. Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
And yeah, have a great rest of the day, everyone. And I'll see the follows on Monday stand up again, as always. Okay.
Thank
Bye bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye.
Cheers.